It features sacrifices aplenty. A queen sacrifice, of course, is a must in a Brilliancy prize. It features both positionally amazing ideas and tactically amazing ideas. It features original ideas, ideas that I've never really seen before. Ideas by White also that were really, really nice. Tactical ideas by Dvirnyy that he could have implemented as well. So that's actually a very important thing for me. It's like it's not a one-sided game. White had his chances. And I think you guys will just see that taken together, all of these things make this game very deserving of the Brilliancy prize. So let's jump in. Let's take a look at the game, Dvirnyy against Shirov. Let's flip the board. Apologize for the technical and difficulties. Bishop f5 here. In Slav defense, bishop f5. And in this position, captures a d5. Maybe Agad will analyze this game. I'm actually quite sure that he will analyze it. Sure that he will do a very capable job of it. So it was a Slav defense, which has been Shirov's weapon of choice for years and years and years. And he develops the bishop. I will once again go quickly through the opening, which is a very, very popular theoretical line where basically White, at the cost of certain structural weaknesses, gets this bishop on g6 to a place where it can be captured, which is exactly what happens. Both sides develop their pieces. Here Dvirnyy captures the pawn. Shirov opens up the h-file and castles long. Very sharp continuation. That has, it's not like a case that Dvirnyy is crazy. This has been played many, many times, over 170. Carlsen played it against Vachier in the Carlsen Invitational recently. Tons of players over 2,700 have tried this, including Wang Hao, who has played this line 4 times. And nobody has tried rook takes h2. The reason is very simple. This is not actually a sacrifice. Takes, queen takes b7, wins the rook. So of course you cannot, I am on chess base. And so Shirov goes knight b to d7. Dvirnyy discharges the central tension, goes king b1, tucking his king away. This is all theory, although king b1 is rare. a6 is still common. And this is the point at which Shirov plays a novelty in a very Shirovian style. The move that has been tried 7 times previously is queen to b6, a couple of GM games. And White is maybe slightly better here, but of course Shirov didn't want an endgame. And I also think that Shirov didn't want this queen on b6 blocking the pawn from coming to b5. So actually the move queen to d1 here would have been very strong for Dvirnyy. Because this queen on b6 is sticking out. It's like the queen alone is not going to attack, so Shirov might have had to waste the tempo with queen a7. Queen d1, by the way, would have been a novelty, so anyone interested in getting a leg up, I think queen d1 is the strongest move by far in this position, never been played. So somebody repeats this, this is what you should do. But for whatever reason, Shirov played queen b8, which is risky and could have actually been quite severely punished. Now, moves like these, queen b8, can be usually punished with blows in the center. So what move, and actually I think the correct move is quite intuitive. I don't want to trivialize it, but what do you guys think White could have done here? To try to punish the fact that Black is a little bit cramped right now, he's not castled. Yeah, so e4. e4 is extremely strong. Now, I struggle to figure out why Dvirnyy didn't do it. And I think that he didn't do it because he was afraid Shirov would meet the move with e5. And okay, maybe he thought like he didn't want to give this knight the c5 square. I mean, maybe he thought that this was in Shirov's favor. But the reality is, now the move bishop c4 comes in because Shirov has opened up the diagonal. And if he castles now, then White piles on the pressure here. Takes, and this is plus over minus. Basically, Black has to succumb to an endgame that's highly inferior to e takes d4, takes, rook a7. And I don't think that Black is losing here. But as you guys can probably just tell by the position, it is very, very unpleasant. So the move e4 would have given Dvirnyy a serious advantage. Okay. Yes, that is an inaccuracy by Shirov, but because this is still the opening, I give this a pass. Like, I don't believe this distracts from the game. Dvirnyy plays h4, jump-starting his attack on the king side. Understandable. He's discouraging Black from castling because he's going to play g4. And he's going to rip Black to shreds with h5. Okay. So Shirov delays castling and plays b5. Now we see a4 by Dvirnyy trying to slow down the progression of Black's pawns. Now we have the advice, do not push the pawn on the same side as your king is. Now, that is sometimes true, but you have to take that with a grain of salt. Where, you know, white tries to use his pawns to freeze black's pawns. So in the case of b4, what would happen is, as you can see, black's pawns are frozen, and now there's this b5 square that white can occupy with his bishop. So that was Dvirny's idea. Shirov, being Shirov, is like, no, I'm castling. Be my guest, take my pawn. Obviously, white does not do this. That would be ridiculous. To open up all these files for black and put the bishop on such a vulnerable square with rook b8 to follow with a huge attack for the pawn. Why queen b8 before b5? GP Bear asks. Absolutely. The reason is that with his move rook c1, white has x-rayed the queen. And so he threatens a host of nasty discoveries, including knight takes d5. So you have to move the queen. Okay. But he's castled. So Dvirnyy says, okay, first let me take care of some business and go a5 and freeze the pawns as he had tried to do, because Shirov wanted to kind of take on a4 here, open up the b file. Now Shirov gets his rook to c8 to the open file. Dvirnyy develops his bishop to d3. Now he could have gone g4. That was possible. But I think that Dvirnyy was thinking that he was in no hurry here. Like, black has no attack. What makes this game beautiful is Shirov's ability to manufacture an attack on the queen side when it appears that he has absolutely no attack in sight. And this next move starts a absolutely incredible sequence of moves, which I think is just typical Shirov and just worthy of celebration. So, the next move is the top move according to the computer. So those of you who are saying this is just crap, this next move is the top choice of Stockfish 12. And it comes from the fact that if black allows this, well, that's just going to be really nasty. So Shirov is like, I need to stop g4 at all costs. And he goes queen g3, basically putting his queen in front of the pawn, attacking it. Dvirnyy defends it with rook cg1. But in doing so, he has now diverted a potential defensive resource from the queen side. Correctly, but still, now the king is beginning to feel a little bit lonely, and Shirov pounces with a sacrifice. This next move is, I would say, a relatively thematic sacrifice, but nonetheless a very nice one. So I've given you guys some hints. Try to find black's next move. Yeah. Rook c4 it is. And this is an exchange sacrifice. The idea being, you can actually take with either pawn. I like the idea of taking with this pawn and just starting to push the pawns. And yes, white is probably better, but the advantage is actually not vast. It's like plus 0.7 or plus 1, which is not that much. And in order to show this plus 1, white must avoid this move, which loses to b3, and now the attack gets devastating. So, a very practical decision by Shirov and a very, very typical sacrifice. He loves these exchange sacks. Of course, Dvirnyy sees this and does not go along with it. Now, I said part of the reason I chose this is because white also had very nice ideas available at his disposal. And here Dvirnyy missed one of them, which was h5. Sacking the pawn two different ways in order to open the h file. If knight takes h5, you would go rook h3, double, and go g4 and win. Because clearly the rook penetration is deadly. So if g takes h5, then still rook h3, and now g4. Now we basically invited this pawn to h5 in order to be able to get it out again. And had h5 been played, Shirov would have to go g5, and after h6 to go g6, keeping the file closed. But now Dvirnyy, having introduced more weaknesses in black's position, chases the queen away and goes back to an old plan, going e4 with a huge initiative, very, very nasty position for black objectively. So this is what Dvirnyy could have done, but he goes f4. And he essentially, the queen on g3 is almost trapped. It has no squares, and it now cannot go back, so Monka S. And it's nowhere near the queen side. Shirov's next move deserves applause. Now, first of all, Shirov could have taken on d4, which was actually probably the best move. Also really nice move. Obviously, this would have been really good. Now, Shirov probably rejected this due to knight e2, winning the rook. But how do you get the most for the rook? How do you do the most for the rook? Haha, Bobby Fischer says it was pretty. Yeah, so rook takes d3. And Black's got full compensation for the exchange. He's got beautiful square on e4. Knight comes out to c5. Excellent position by Shirov, but he plays rook a c8, which is actually not bad at all. And what amazes me about this move is the calmness with which he plays. He doesn't even mind that the queen is trapped. Dvirnyy brings his queen back to d1, further paralyzing Black's queen. And again, Shirov continues to attack b4. And this was essentially the critical moment number one. Dvirnyy goes knight e2, and he should have gone knight a4, and he should have gone for a completely different strategy. Very instructive moment. Rather than trying to trap the queen, Dvirnyy should have tried to trade it. And this is actually gives us a very important lesson that I think derives from a lot of computer analysis, is that trapping a queen can be tremendously difficult, but you can use the queen's compromised position to actually force a trade, and trade can be devastating for the side that has sacrificed a lot positionally trying to attack. So the reason you go knight a4 is in order to keep the diagonal open for the queen. Black cannot stop the idea of queen f. Well, now he's got to move the rook back. You know, it's like the roller coaster coming down. He's got to trade queens. If you take a very close look at this position, White is still attacking, first of all. Second of all, look at this pawn on a6 and how weak it is. White's going to go rook c1. He's going to trade all the rooks, and he's going to take this pawn. Black has to go into complete passivity, but now knight b6 comes in. White has several maneuvers. This is extremely nasty. Appreciate it, Lakeside Poker. Extremely nasty for Black. And so this very non-trivial idea would have given a big advantage to Dvirnyy. Why queen f3 instead of excellent questions, you know? Because this trade is a lot worse positionally for White than the one on f3. Because now Black has access to a bunch of these holes. Now you might be asking, but wait a second, can't Black go queen g4 here? Yes, he can, but now White can hold the tension. You know, White can continue as if it were an endgame, whereas if you delegate the rook to h3, the rook on h3 is now stranded. Now, one more important thing. A move like rook h3, you want to make sure that you don't assign to the rook a task that could, you know, be done otherwise. So you want to make sure that pieces are playing to their maximum. So this idea would have been very strong. Instead, Dvirnyy goes after the queen. And at this one, I think he maybe was expecting, I don't know, queen f2. And I think that this is what he was relying on. He goes rook to h3. 500 bits, Bobby Fischer. Thank you so much. And he goes rook f3 and traps the queen. But Shirov goes queen g4. And Dvirnyy now realizes, oh, shoot, like, let me trade queens. Let me backpedal. Let me backpedal and trade queens. And this is where the amazingness starts. This is where the amazingness starts. All right. We need to ban this guy. We need to ban this guy. Or at least time him out for a long time. Maybe give him one more chance. But random messages disrupt the flow of analysis. Random messages disrupt the flow of analysis, my man. Okay. So, first of all, if we take, then again we get one of those unpleasant endgames. Now, this is not as bad for Black as the previous one was, but it certainly is. White holds all the winning chances. White holds all the winning chances. But Shura finds an absolutely stunning move in this position. And this combination is so beautiful. This move is so beautiful. And it is the only move to keep equality, technically speaking. And it is the correct move. Black to play and find a stunning combination, which I am sure you guys will see why this is top prize after you see the move. Benjamin Buck, Grandmaster Benjamin Buck. Did you see the game? Yeah. So I won't dwell too long on this because I do want to play some blitz afterward. So knight to e4. This will go down as one of Shirov's greatest moves. Thank you, Benjamin. I appreciate it. Big honor that Grandmaster is watching, and amazing move. Now let's unpack this. It blunders the queen. Shirov blundered the queen. And Shirov now resigned. This was all an elaborate prank. Shirov actually just blundered the queen and resigned. But I wanted to make fun of the legend, so just kidding. Of course, black mates with the continuation. Knight takes d2 check. King a1, and now an amazing quiet move that leads to imminent checkmate. What is it? And at this point, everybody should see it. Boom. Rook is opened up. You can take the rook, but the one replaces the other. And there is simply no stopping mate. Now, white can stave it off. Can go knight a2, but the rook travels and takes the knight. And the comical effect created by, look at this. White has twisted around, and this just shows that you need to attack with urgency. My coach would always say, prepare slowly and attack fast. White over-prepared the attack. He spent too long trying to twist himself around and, trying hither and thither, trying to get his pieces this way and that way. He should have just gone h5 already. And he pays the price for it in the form of these pieces. So, really, really amazing position. Now, that's not even the only piece that Dvirnyy can take. He can take the rook. But this is where the amazing part, and this is what I like particularly, every Brilliancy that I choose as top prize has to have a positional element to it. And the positional element to this one is that black can actually take the queen and actually still be much better in the endgame. Because black has amazing compensation for the pawn. I mean, look at this. This other knight is going to come around to d5. I mean, just visually. I'm not expecting you to see everything here. Black is also threatening c3, c2. Total positional domination. Despite being down in exchange, the computer evaluates this at a high depth as plus 0.5. So a very hefty advantage for black. And from a human perspective, obviously very difficult to play for white. That is not even the only possibility. You could also take the bishop, and with the same idea, you could play in a more attacking fashion with DC. Probably this might be even better. But Dvirnyy goes bishop e2, which is a decisive mistake. The correct move, ironically, was to take neither the queen nor the rook, but rather the knight, and go into this endgame. And this endgame, while it might be slightly worse for white, is probably equal from an objective standpoint. Because while it might appear that black gets his knight to a very nice square, white uses the c-file to trade both rooks. And remember, the a6 pawn is still weak, so you have to watch over it. This is equal. Amazing stuff. You don't take the queen, you don't take the rook, you take instead the knight and bail things out. But Dvirnyy, sensibly enough, goes bishop e2. And after queen f5, he goes back to d3, and he basically says, I'm going to hold you together, I'm going to pin you. To which Shirov responds knight tf6, bringing his knight in. Except here's the thing, this looks like a blunder. If black is allowed to get his knight to g4, the game will be over. There will be too many threats, in particular the threat of knight f2. But this seems to allow Dvirnyy to do exactly what he wanted to do in the first place, trap his queen. With what move? What move seems to trap black's queen and force black to give up a piece? Find it. g4. Bingo. I don't have a phone book. I have, I'm actually tutoring someone in history, believe it or not. I have my first, he's also my chess student, but we are also doing history. So, this is AP World History. I'm just churning the pages. Yeah. It's just so you guys know, I have a life outside of chess. Okay. So, this drops the queen. It's almost like I was a history major. I mean, what kind of a fraud am I to choose history of all things to tutor? Why do you need a tutor for anything? I mean, he's also been my student for a while. So I am not Benjamin, actually. So anyways, this is what makes this game doubly beautiful. Even without this, it probably would have won the Brilliancy Prize. But Shirov What does he do? Boom. Boom. Same combination. Second time around. And this time it works because it wins the exchange. Queen takes g4. Knight takes d2. Dvirnyy, king a1. And now the move b3 would have won. But it would not have won as simply because of the move bishop b1. So Shirov goes for the business approach. Boom. And here Dvirnyy resigned. Because after takes, king a2, b3 is checkmate. Look at this. He does the same combination that involves a queen and a rook sacrifice literally twice. So to recap, this is the first instantiation. And then this is the second. And it's the same pieces are hanging. I mean, isn't this insane? And by the way, if he goes king a2, then b3. And rook a4. Yeah, the bishop is the... So this was rapid. Now, Dvirny's last chance for equality should have been to take. Yeah. That was the game. Now, obviously, was it perfect? No. Shirov made several mistakes, gave Dvirnyy several chances, e4 here. And maybe like the biggest chance that Dvirnyy really had to just like change the course of the game was h5. But he took too long. Like he was trying to weave the knight for too long. He should have just got on with it and gone h5. So he tries to trap the queen, fails, now knight e4 once and twice, and ends in checkmate. And that is my choice for the first prize awarded, a total of 3 points of the Gazprom FIDE 2020 Olympiad Brilliancy Prize.